days, or depending on whether you're viewing these live with me or whether you're watching them step by step. So 7, I deliberately put this one as change, begin to open up, locking in the brain patterns and the shifts. 7 numerologically is representative of shift and change. To me, the 7 was the scythe in the pack of cards, which is sharp change, swift change. But in terms of today, we're talking about the science of change in your brain and how the neurological changes and biological chemistry changes of the brain when we're looking at change. Now, I'm going to read the science bit so I don't miss anything out. So first, here's a couple of things that can actually really shift. And I've shared this, so it was from an article, 10 things you can do to literally change your brain. Some of them were a bit surprising. Exercising is not surprising. I remember with suffering from, anyone that suffered from depression will know it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. And exercise is actually quite often, if you've got a get doctor prescribed to shift this chemical, so you get the endorphins going, you get that shift of change. And when we work with this in Qigong, we literally talk about the bilateral patterns of the brain getting stuck. We need to reshift them so they're kind of like get them back moving again. But just to read this little extract for you. Physical activity is important for obvious reasons. However, exercise doesn't just promote a healthier body. Recent research has shown that physical exercise also benefits the brain. For starters, physical activity can improve your brain's plasticity, as too does meditation, which is another one, and sleeping in a regular pattern if you've got your cadence rhythms in the right thing. Anyway, the plasticity of the cerebral quantity that affects memory, motor skills, and the ability to learn. According to a study conducted at the University of Adelaide in Australia, small groups of adults in their late 20s and early 30s participated in 30-minute sessions of vigorous activity. Immediately after the session, their brains showed a significant increase in neuroplasticity. If that's not enough motivation to get you out for a run, research shows that exercise also releases chemicals in the brain that make you feel happy. It's the endorphins. Buffer, a co-founder of Leo Widrick, explains that endorphins and a complicated sounding protein called brain derivative neurotropical factor, BDNF, are released in the brain as you do physical exercise. These two chemicals help fight stress and promote happiness. So they're the feel good, and the endorphins, and also known to give a feeling of basically feeling good. Which would explain why some people can actually become addicted to exercises, which is the thing. In short, exercise makes you smarter and happier at the same time. Sounds like a win-win to me. Yes, of course, as long as you're not addicted to having that. Sleep is essential. Activity is not activity that's not even science can fully explain. We know that it restorative, and everyone does it, and a lack can literally be bad, really bad. But research still struggle to understand why we sleep. It certainly isn't an energy saving technique, as we only actually save roughly 10k calories over a course of 8 hours sleep, yet going without sleep can make you irritable, lead to memory loss and false memories, and in extreme cases cause slurred speech and even brain damage. I would hazard a guess that's because when we sleep we disconnect from the reality, but we connect deeply to our core, our access to, so it's to do with the fact that we are connecting, so we're rebooting, so we're reconnecting to source on a deep level in the subconscious brain is what I would say that's to do with. Meditation, of course, people have shown swarm meditation for by meditation for millennia, for good reason. Meditation doesn't just help you find emotional balance in life, it actually changes your brain. As Rebecca Gladden, MD, explains, the physical process of in psychology today, before beginning a regular meditation habit, people tend to have strong neuro connections with the cats in the background, ventromedia prefrontal cortex, what Gladys is calling me center of the brain. As a result, they are more likely to interpret physical sensations or anxiety or fear as a personal problem, something related to themselves. As a result, they are more likely to experience repeated thoughts about their lives, mistakes they've made, what people think of them, etc. So those that don't meditate, and the me center, it's particularly rational. But in context, people who meditate regularly, which is you guys, obviously, if you're watching me, meditate regularly, slow, weaker connection with the me center. So the brain is strongly connected to the latter prefrontal cortex and assemblement center of the brain. This helps meditators to take problems less personally and approach them more logically. Basically, we can think clearer when we are connected, and we've got longer telemites as well. Generally, if you meditate, the telomeres have been measured as being longer, which is connected also with longevity. So these are chemical reactions we're referring to in the brain, and I know I'm going in deep, but I'm talking about this really shifting on a physical level, that brain way, and it demonstrates as well. And let's finish up with what so means that thought meditation, we can become better at managing anxiety, stress, potentially dangerous situations. In addition to neuro connections, which grow stronger through meditation, help promote empathy, compassion, particularly for people who are most unlike us, says Gladden. So sitting still, trying to focus on the present moment for as little as 15 minutes per day significantly reduces stress, essentially makes you a better person overall. And obviously all of those factors have a knock-on effect on your biology of your immune system and everything else. I mean, I could go on with the meditation thing. This one was a funny one, drinking coffee, but I want to just jump because I had a lot I wanted to talk about. So rebelling thoughts as a deceptive of the brain experience, reattributing the thoughts to its real source, reforcing the mind by shifting to a positive activity. These are all things that can shift the brain chemistry. Revaluing your thoughts. So these are things that I've been going over with you, how we reassess, which I spoke about briefly in day 6, the focusing of your mind and shifting to positive activity. So you're looking, yesterday we talked about, or in day 6 we talked about taking whatever pattern it was and rewriting that as an affirmation, so in a positive format. That's why, because then when you're seeing it from a different perspective, from that different clarity, which we spoke about in day 1, and you're moving into a more willingness to transform, all these things start to happen, and they change, which is why I call it biological goal setting. So reevaluating your thoughts for what they objectively are, sort of understanding yourself, learning yourself. This is where, and this is why today is called Change Begins, and opening up. You're opening up to the possibility. The bottom line, Schwarzkopf guy confirms that although his focus on treating OCD, his method could be used for rewiring the brain to create change in any area of business, work or life, since it has been significantly demonstrated that the brain has been altered through the behavioural changes. It's safe to say that you could do the same things by altering responses to any number of other behaviours. What all of this means to me is that we can learn to improve our ability to defeat the mental trap we tend to fall into, especially when facing a challenge. So we reframe the challenge, we reframe it into it going beyond. So reevaluating your thoughts on what they objectively are. The rewiring process all comes together in the fourth step, which is combination effect of the first 3 steps. Every time you rebel, reattribute and refocus, your brain creates a new connection. Repeating these actions can reinforce the connection. As a result, you can begin to revalue old patterns as destructive distractions or habits ingrained within the brain. You can assess how accurate or valid these thoughts are, what would happen if you gave into them, and what would you achieve instead of falling back on the habits that you want back. In turn, patterns that once held you back became deceptive brain messages with little to no value. As you work on rewiring your brain over time, the old tendencies can begin to fade into insignificance altogether. The 2 very positive things happen, Swatchkoff says in this statement by, where are we? The Neurological Change and How to Rewire the Brain by Matthew E. May. The first is that you're happier because you have control over your behavioural responses to your thoughts and feelings. The second thing is that by doing that, you change the faulty brain chemistry. So you are setting what you want in there when you become aware, and when you start to compound these with compound habits, as we were talking about, with our focusedness and our willingness to change. Once we're aware, we can really start to shift and make changes in the brain. So from a personal perspective, and I know today's a little bit longer, what does all this mean? How can you put this into context? And I'm going to use myself as an example, as I'm the best example I know. From someone that suffered from panic attacks when I was younger, I would look at my breath, going into my breathing, and when that anxiety, panic, sheer panic or fight or flight brain response was coming up, and the nervous system was reacting, I would slow my breath down. So I'd get out of the brain into the breath, through the nose, out. At the time I was just doing it out through the mouth. Now I know how to reinforce that with the Qigong breath, and this is what I'd like to do with you today. When patterns are coming up, I just want you to do a breath work, a simple breath work of because if you're in that really, say 100, 1 to 100 being really needing to shake, fight or flight, fear of the brain, I've got to have the chocolate, or I've got to go, and it has control of you, as to being at 1, I'm completely take it or leave it, I'm completely chill, I'm in control, feeling control, don't feel like I'm being tested or triggered. So you want to kind of gauge where you are on that scale. But even if you're at 100, the breath is the thing that will be able to calm the sympathetic nervous system. And then the second thing that I recommend is shaking. So when we shake in Qigong, we literally, I need to see because you weren't going to see me, stand and shake our arms, bouncing on the knees, and really just kind of shimmy, shake your body out. This is the best way to reset the nervous system. So you're resetting the brain, and you're giving it a physical thing to shake that off of that chemical thing that's happening. So we're putting an interrupting pattern in place on the chemical things that are happening with the body on a very physical level. So they're the 2 things that I would highly recommend doing. We tend to do this, zip it back in when we first start to become awake and aware of, like, when you're saying, for example, with your words and your language. And one of the things I said yesterday was contextualizing and realizing the dynamics. So if you're starting to spend that week, when we work on that in the week, we will be going over just making a note. And one of the things that I suggested to my members is I have a positive aspects book, but I have a book of shadows. So whenever a pattern or a thought form would come up, I would write it down, not because I wanted that to be, because it's already there, but so you start to become aware. And this is, if you struggled with yesterday with day 6, something that you can do, you can add to. And don't think too much about it, just be in awareness of them over that day. Work with over a day when the thought comes up, oh, I'm too fat, or oh, I've got grey hair, or oh, I'm not good enough, or I can't do that. Whatever those form patterns that are resistance that are coming up in pain, I don't have enough money, that whatever there will be some that you really truly believe. So write them down, and then we can assess them in the week that we work with that, if you're coming and doing the 12 weeks, or you can self-assess if you're just doing these 12 days then to when you're rewriting your affirmations. So shifting our brain into a more positive choice is restructuring whatever that choice is. So remembering you have a choice. So we call it reframing in psycho speak. So in coaching, so you want to reframe it into a more positive way. For example, if it's something like funds, not enough funds. So how can you reframe the wording? How can we do this so it's not so negative? This is one I would struggle with. So I started when I felt like the easiest way to do this was when I was in this space, and I'm moving out of this now, is to look at where there is abundance in your life. And Louise L. Hay, in her prosperity workshop I listened to a very long time ago when I was about 16, said you can take like 0 and make money from 0, but if it makes you happy, you should at the time take £5 and see how you can double that. And one of the ladies has said, oh, I drove along the road when I was working on this, and it said, here, free Hoover for anyone that wants. And I found people would start giving me things when I started working on shifting this pattern. But to begin with, things like foraging, and the nature has an abundance of leaves, of greenery, going of sun. If you're somewhere that's hot, because someone said, well, I live in Arizona and it's not very green, my friend, and I said, yeah, but you've got an abundance of sun, of light, and that can be cultivated into energy, like very realistically into energy, with solar activities. You can even utilize that sun to create water through condensation, through creativity and thinking about outside of the box. So think about where there is abundance of stuff, and then it makes you think, when someone thinks desert, they certainly don't think water, but you've got an abundance of sun that then creates light, can create condensation, can draw that condensation out of the environment in a very real way. So there can be, so it's how you think and your perspective can shift something that you would say as no, that's definite, that's set in stone, is changing that when you see it and come at it from a different perspective, which is why I'm saying transformation and shift in the way we think about things and thinking outside of the box. So today has been very long, and I'm going to leave it with that, but I wanted to kind of really give you a little bit of background on the science, but there's so much more to it than what I've just touched on, and we'll go into that when we work through on week 7. So just to recap, change and looking within at the brain shifts and the chemicals that are happening, what emotions are creating these chemicals, where are these connected? I mean, I could go on for ages. So all I'd like you to do is be aware of where you are on the emotional scale, breathe through any triggers and anything that comes up. Shaking is another thing to do. And then think about if there's any of these things that change your brain chemistry that you already do. Exercising, do you have a good sleep pattern? meditation. What were some of the others? Listening to music, reading a book, listening to music, wandering outside in nature, very grounding, multitasking. These are bad for the bad one. Believing you can change your brain. So the belief in itself. Carol Derrick, I will actually add this, and I'll explain this, and I'll add this video to the members page. So if you don't have to be a paid member, if you're subscribed to my Patreon site, all of the things that I post in there for all members, you'll have access to the free stuff, and then obviously there's stuff that's in there just for the paid members, if you want to come along and join us, and I'll put a link below this video for that as well. So there's a TED talk for the importance of believing you can improve. It sums up the profound point that kids who are taught that they didn't correctly solve a problem or pass a test yet show more willingness to learn and improve than those graded on simple pass or fail. And this comes into our expectation as well. I think Aaron Doughty did a really good video on this where he's talking about a book that he read with the science of like mice, and literally there was postage notes saying like thick stupid mouse and intelligent mouse, and no difference. It's just someone had stuck labels on them, and those labels dictated how they affected. So this is kind of goes into how we interpret our morphogenetic field, but we're going to that more in depth, and I think I've overwhelmed you enough today. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow on day 8.